Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and man, I can't believe how fast life moves. It feels like just yesterday I was having the summer of my life, and now school is in session, football has started, and snow season is right around the corner. And what's funny is, as important as snow is to my life, I don't even care about it right now. All I think about now is Ange's health, how we manage it, keeping her out of pain, keeping her and us positive, which is hard to do when every day it feels like we're getting more and more negative news. And then, on top of all that shit, there's the regular stuff that needs to happen in life. So, while right now I don't care about snow, you can bet your ass that I'm going to be fiending for it once the summit at Snoqualmie opens up. Last year, that mountain was the one place where all my problems disappeared. And while they came back every chairlift ride, I really needed that mental break. Speaking of mental and physical breaks, my guest this week almost vanished from the snow for a while. Ashley Battersby was one of the darlings of slopestyle and big air, ushering in tricks like the Switch 10, among other insane moves. But the snow wasn't always kind to Ashley. Life can be like that sometimes, and she suffered injuries at the most inopportune moments of her career. And eventually, those injuries forced her to retire. And when Ashley stepped away, she totally disappeared, and I was stoked to be able to catch up with her and talk about her life and times. Before we get into it, I want to thank all of you for your kind words and messages. It really does make me feel good even when I get emotional when reading them. So thank you for those. Also, please review me wherever you listen and tell a friend about the show. If you like it, I bet your friends will too, so telling them helps me out. But what really helps me out the most is supporting my incredible sponsors who make this happen. They are Stanley, Outdoor Research, Elan Skis, Best Day Brewing, Rollerblade, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Now, it's time to chat with Ashley Battersby. I have an Aunt Nancy, and while she is born and raised Jewish, she loves Christmas. She's one of those people that when we go to the beach, she finds a Christmas store and buys shit in the summer. And like I said, we're Jewish. Can you describe how far your obsession with the Christmas holiday goes?
Me? How do you know this?
I just know things.
Oh my God, Christmas. All right. Well, I have a Christmas tree up in my office right now. It's pink. It stays up all year round. I was actually listening to Christmas music this morning on the way to work because it started getting a little frosty outside. I have 3 Christmas trees. Once October 31st hits, I don't even wait until Halloween's done. And I leave it up until after my birthday, until February 1st. I love Christmas.
Are you very religious, or is it just you love the holiday?
This is funny, Mike. I grew up very Catholic, born and raised, very, very Catholic. But, as I started skiing and competing and traveling all over the world, started kind of changing my views about life. And then the time I retired, I was like, all right, well, I need something better for my body because skiing isn't working. So I got into yoga and the studies of yoga and started kind of fully changing my belief systems completely because of that, right after I retired. So I think it started off super religious, loving Christmas, but I think it's really because my mom made every single holiday so special growing up. Every time we had a birthday or Easter or Valentine's Day, she'd make pancakes for us that morning, either for school or whatever big holiday. And Christmas was always massive. My brothers hated growing up with me and my mom because Christmas was just she made everything so fun. And I think it was the Santa and, the music, and my mom just made it so fun. She had this music. It's called Children's Christmas Choir, blasting through our whole surround system in Chicago from probably Thanksgiving until my birthday. And I loved Christmas so much. So she kept this song going on when we went to bed, this whole CD all night, all day. And I fell in love with Christmas. I don't know, probably because of Mom.
Well, it sounds like you're still totally in love with Christmas, and I'm not just saying that based on what you're telling me right now. I was talking to some people who went to your wedding last year, and they said they needed to borrow your car to go get some booze in Utah somewhere. It was 30 minutes away, and there was no service at all. And they said they could find one CD in the car, and it was a mix CD, and they pop it in, and it's July or whatever month it is, and it is Christmas music, and they were losing their minds. This is what she listens to on everyday drives.
God, I can only guess who you talk to. I know who it probably is.
This will even let you know who it was even more, because the person I was talking to was Anna Siegel, and she had mentioned that she brought some clothing to your wedding week. It was a cream-colored outfit, and she had no idea that nobody is supposed to wear white around a bride. I have no idea about that either. We're both Jewish. Maybe that's why we don't know. But she didn't know it was a no-no. And then is it true that you had someone go ransack her room, go through all of her clothing because of this superstition to make sure that she didn't wear anything else white at your wedding?
All right, look, she's telling it a little, I think, like intense. Yes, first of all, she's right about the Christmas CD. It stays in my car. That's the one I played this morning. I love it. I love Christmas. So yeah, sue me. Christmas is the best. The white, I don't know if it's a superstition. I think it's because I just like, as a little girl, I've like always wanted to like wear the white thing. And I wanted to like, I had Barbies growing up, like the girl dreams about her big white dress. I remember her wearing the cream dress, and Carrie Herman, another best friend, we all know Carrie. Carrie told her she can't wear white. I get to wear white. But then Carrie checked me the day after my wedding and she was like, all right, everybody else can wear white. It's all good. I don't know. I just like growing up, I wanted to like just be the only one in white.
So that makes it sound like it's not a total superstitious thing. It's just something that you had from a kid. But do you have superstitions like growing up through your ski career? Were the things that you had to do to make things right in the world for you?
I don't know if I had superstitions growing up for skiing as far as that. I will tell you one thing. Whenever I competed, I had pasta every single night before a competition. So I don't know what it was, but like that was the thing I ate and I swore by it. So I just continue to eat it. But other superstitions, I don't really know.
Okay. Well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we need to talk about growing up in Chicago. And ski-wise, your home hill was home to another Utah legend. At least I believe Brant Moles grew up skiing at the 200-foot Grand Geneva in Wisconsin that was also known as the Playboy Club, just like you. Can you describe the history of that place?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Brant Moles, so cool. I knew that too. He was an inspiration growing up as well. Yeah, 200-foot vertical feet, 10 chairs going up, 10 chairs coming down. And I remember me and my brothers and a couple other kids ran that hill. My parents both worked there as ski instructors and snowboard instructors. They were the head people there, the head teachers. And I remember that the Grand Geneva was open from 9 a.m. in the morning until 9 at night. And my parents used to have to call the lifties to say, get those kids off the freaking hill. We're ready to go home. So, I mean, it was like our playground. And I just remember like skiing on ice and we built these big jumps and we would do backflips off of them and we would get in trouble because at the time there was no flips allowed at Grand Geneva. And it's super funny actually growing up there. I remember it being so much bigger. I remember these hills being massive because we were so small at the time. And then I actually took my husband, I took him back there the first time we met, the first year we met. And I was like, hey, bring your hiking shoes. We're going to hike to the top of this massive hill that I went skiing on, and he was like, all right, whatever. We got there. He walked up in sandals in 5 minutes. And I was like, dude, no, I remember it being bigger. There's a golf course right behind Grand Geneva. He grabbed a golf ball. We walked to the top of it's called Hot Dog. The first big hill is called Hot Dog. He took that golf ball, threw it from the top to the bottom. He's like, this is not a mountain. But I remember it being big. There were only 3 mountains. You had Hot Dog, Michigan, and Annie Fanny. There were 3 names. Now they just call it A, B, and C, which is dumb and lame. But yeah, really cool memories back there. In fact, I actually still have some best friends that are out of that mountain. Some of them are now teaching and coaching the Steamboat Springs ski team over there. They've just gone on to the West. So it's pretty cool. A lot of good skiers, I would say, come out of the Midwest.
And when you think of it, you're really born into skiing. Your parents were both ski and snowboard instructors, but I'm going to guess there's more than the family business than just teaching skiing. Did your folks have other jobs other than Lake Geneva or Grand Geneva?
Well, my mom's main job was being a mom.
Well, she had 4 kids, right? I mean,
yeah, there were 4 of us kids. Yep. 3 boys and me. And so my mom was a full-time mom and the best. That's why I love Christmas, because she made it so fun, right? But my dad, my dad owned and ran a company in Chicago. It was an oil company. He did pretty well for himself. My grandfather actually started it from the ground up as an orphan, and my dad took over. My dad has always skied with us, and every spring break, summer break, winter break, I remember on Christmas, of course, my dad would say, "We're going to Park City," for all of these major breaks that we had during school when all my other friends were going to Mexico or somewhere crazy and warm, and we were always going to Park City. We came here to ski, so we got to know how to ski Park City at a pretty young age. My parents were still skiing with us in the backpack. I don't know if that's even legal anymore to like ski with your kid behind you and the little kiddie backpacks, but my mom skied with us 9 months pregnant. My dad skied with one in the backpack. I don't know if they ever used the leash, but the little edgy wedgies.
Yep.
So yeah, my mom had us all cooking in the oven 9 months pregnant, which is pretty cool. They're diehards.
And I read somewhere that with skiing, you wanted to be like Peekaboo Street. Did you see her win Olympic gold when you're in Chicago in like 98? And is that what made you want to be a ski racer early on?
You know what? I can't remember that specifically. I just remember my dad got me she did a biography, a book, and he got it for me for Christmas. And I read that thing over and over and over and memorized her life, basically. I don't know if I ever really remember watching her in the Olympics, but I remember her on TV somewhere. And I was like, that's who I want to be. Yeah. And then my dad made a connection, got her signed poster. She was all over my room. And then actually, I believe it was in 2005 or six, she contacted me, basically shat my pants, and she wanted me to be on Women of Winter. That was her like channel at the time.
Huh.
And I got to ski with Peekaboo Street for the first time. I was freaking out. I was young. I was brand new to like free riding and still riding for Line and Helly Hansen, my first sponsors. And I still have it on like CD. But she had me on her show and she was like, all right, I'm going to ski forward, ski backwards. We'll see who wins. I don't know if she gave me a head start or what, but I definitely won skiing backwards. I'll claim
that. That's awesome. I got to change I can't talk when you're talking in this or I'm losing you for some reason. So if it's weird that I'm not talking, that's the reason why. But along with skiing, which you can do a few months a year when you live in the Chicago area, all over the Midwest, I feel like inline skating is cool. There's a big hockey culture there, and people don't look at inline skating in Chicago like maybe they do in California because there was definitely a stigma in some other cities. But was inline skating something that you and your brothers did when ski season wasn't happening?
Yeah, Chicago, like we would take the L train, the Metro from our place all the way down to the city because A, we couldn't drive at the time, and B, it was a quicker route. So me, all my brother's friends, all of our like guy friends, I was the only chick out of the whole crew, but we would take it from our hometown into Chicago almost every day in the summer for sure. And every day that there wasn't snow or freezing cold, and we would skate the streets of Chicago. We had a local skate park, but my brothers got me into it, and I was actually a better street rollerblader than I was skier at that time. Like I could still ski, but rollerblading is actually what helped me have the confidence on rails and like become the rail skier that I was able to become, especially as a female at the time. There wasn't that many girls free riding, and the rail on rollerblades was the thing that got me that confidence. Because I mean, how big is a rollerblade? It's as big as your foot, right? Then you get on skis and man, the confidence and the balance is just so much easier on skis.
Yeah, I mean, you're balancing on a quarter on your inline skates. I mean, that H-block area is so small when you're getting on a rail. And yeah, like you say, skis, there's a lot more room for error where you can easily correct yourself. So yeah, a lot of the people that I've seen that start with inline skates, I mean, you can look at the Yannick B's, you can look at the Kaya Turskis. They excel when they switch over to skiing because, like you said, it gets a lot easier, right?
Oh my gosh, 1,000%. And on Yannick B, man, I haven't heard that name in a long time. And all these people that you're like mentioning, they were instrumental, for our ski career, and not just because of skiing, but because of that rollerblading. And it's funny you mentioned Kaya. I mean, Kaya, she's got the biggest place in my heart. One of my best friends. She was a bridesmaid in my wedding, and we've done a lot of not just ski travels together, but all over the world. Kaya and I met as like, I don't know if you would call it pen pals because we never wrote letters to each other in the mail, but we were like email. So like email was out at the time. And Kaya, I had followed her rollerblading career for years because I'm like, I want to be this girl. She's the same age as me. Like she rocks at rollerblading, but like skiing was my number one thing. I was better at skiing than I was at rollerblading. So I'd watch her grind these huge ledges, huge rails, and her and I actually become like email, AOL, like pen pal friends for the longest time. At the time, she had not really ever put skis on. So I was sending her rollerblade videos and she was sending me ski videos as she started. And she went from 0 to fucking 100 on skis in 6 months. That girl sent me a picture of her doing like a 180 over, or a video, a 180 over a 10-foot jump in Montreal. And no joke, 6 months later, I see her at like Vermont Open and she's doing switch 7, something that it took me years to learn. And she's doing it like it's nothing in her sleep. It was crazy.
It was amazing to see her transition because at that time, the inline world was kind of on the way downhill a little bit for the pros. It seemed like there just wasn't that much opportunity. And then on the ski side, there was some opportunity, but she was nobody. And literally, like you said, 0 to 100 so fast, she came in and immediately became the most progressive girl in skiing, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. I mean, she took the cake, and still, I mean, this girl, I don't know if you even watch her Instagram anymore, but she is still in the rollerblade scene. She just like won a Montreal rollerblading cup. She's so humble about it, but she's like, it would have been cheating if I would have taken first place. So I gave it to the next girl in line. And I'm like, of course, because you're still the best. Yeah, this girl could do the shit in her sleep. So it's pretty incredible, like the talent that we have in our sport. But yeah, to go back to what you were saying, it's too bad that rollerblading didn't go much further. And, not being in X Games and all that stuff. I mean, it's incredible to watch these rollerbladers. And I think it's really underrated. Like maybe it's not as cool as skateboarding is, but if you want to become a good skier, I would say that's one of the things you want to train on cross season,
Yeah, I mean, if you're training on a skateboard, it's like you're training to do everything smaller. And then once you get on your blades, you can do everything bigger. And it transfers over to skiing a lot better, I feel like. But, I respect all different types of sports. I have no problems with any of them, really. What I want to say is, you street skating in Chicago, that city has a reputation for crime. Street skating there with a bunch of punk kids, what's the wildest thing you saw in the streets of Chicago?
Like, we didn't go in some of the sketchiest places. There are some places in Chicago for sure, crime and all that. But like we were right downtown in the cities. And the sketchiest thing we saw was probably getting kicked out by cops, like nothing really sketchy. We got to be by the lake. We got to skate the museum handrails. Like really, I didn't see anything sketchy. It was actually more people coming up to us like on the streets that were just like regular average Joe, like, hey man, I want to try that. Or like, amazed that we could do something so crazy. So I don't really remember seeing anything all that intense, but, just getting more hype from the people around watching.
So it's time for my first sponsor break, and Seattle's own Outdoor Research has been supporting the podcast for almost 5 seasons. But you know what? I've been wearing their gear long before they bought ads because they make hands down the warmest, most waterproof gear I've ever purchased. And you know what? There's something to be said for going out into the elements knowing you're going to be drier and warmer than everyone else. Because you're rocking gear made with the best materials that were tested in the brutal elements of the Pacific Northwest. I mean, for decades, OR has been the one-stop shop for mountaineers climbing 7,000-meter peaks, because those life or death situations should always be outfitted with the best gear. But that's only a small part of what they do. Over the past few seasons, OR designers have been working with OR ambassadors like backcountry skier Mark Abma, world champion Troy Podmilsack, X Games gold medalist Zoe Atkin, and snowboarder Neil Provo to create baggier fits and styles that turn heads and have people saying, wow, that's an Outdoor Research jacket? This season, I'll be rocking the freeride fit of the Snow Crew Anorak, and on the colder days, you'll find me on the lightly insulated Tungsten 2. I'm dialed in for the season with outerwear. Now it's your turn. To find out all the latest and greatest, head on over to outdoorresearch.com to see the new website with all the new gear on it. Next up, it's Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. And while we're at the end of summer, it's still really, really hot. And that means it's time to get in the water. And Peter Glenn is the one-stop shop for all of your needs. Think wakeboard, water ski, kneeboard, tubes, swimwear. They have everything to make your summer more fun and functional. And they're a rollerblade brand dealer, so you can take care of your inline needs as well. Peter Glenn has all the brands, all the products, a knowledgeable staff to help you, and a best-in-class website if you can't make it to their stores. But that's not all. They also have a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders of $50 or more, and a hassle-free return policy, which is very important. Peter Glenn isn't one of those big guys trying to take over an industry. They're the mom and pop shop that you've trusted for almost 70 years. If you like this podcast and want it to keep going, please buy from Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. To find out more, head on over to peterglenn.com. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. Think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone over at Stanley, and you aren't going to find them overpriced like a lot of copycat designer brands that have popped up recently. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my discount code. When you head on over to stanley1913.com, go shopping. When you check out, enter the code winteriscoming, that's all one word, all lowercase, and you're going to get 30% off your entire order. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. So you have this life in Chicago, and you live that until you're like 12 years old, and eventually the whole family makes the move to Park City. But I would think that's a tough age to make a big move because you've already established a shit ton of friends and you kind of have your crew. Was it something that was a challenge to move, or are you just psyched to get into the mountains?
No, I was pissed. I was so mad to move. And I remember my little brother, Adam, Zoo, my youngest brother, was too young at the time. And Ty was going into high school / like making moves for college, wanting to go to the U of U. But I was young, and that was like 7th, 8th grade. And I remember being so mad because I was taken out from all my best friends. Like, those are your molding years, And though I loved to ski, I did not want to move away from friends, family, the things that I knew the most. And God, if we didn't make that move, I always think about like, where would I be at in my life if my parents didn't do that for us?
So you're bummed when you make the move, but the highlight is that you move in the most important year in like the history of Salt Lake City. I feel like they're hosting the Olympics. And was it crazy getting there and just seeing the whole town gear up for the games? Like, are you seeing the whole town be built almost?
1,000%. Actually, in school, I remember we had to make blankets for the Olympic athletes. So we were cutting in school. They were making us cut fabric, tie little knots on this fleece fabric to make blankets for the athletes. And I remember the dorms were being built at that time for the athletes. They were redoing everything at the University of Utah to get those athletes there and comfortable. And that, in fact, we went to school only for about half a year, maybe less. Because when the Olympics happened that year, they actually couldn't even get people to school. There was no good way in and out to the high school or middle school. So they cut our school by 3 months. So like, pissed that we had to move, but then you start to get into it and you're like, well, I get to ski all winter and see the Olympics and I don't have to go to school for friggin' 3 months. So it ended up being the most transformational year of all of our lives.
And one thing I didn't bring up, which I should have brought up in the whole Chicago part of the conversation, but I'm a little bit late, is you grew up in Chicago. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, the Bulls. It was like insanity. Were you guys all like a part of that? Did you get to go to games and did you get to experience the most incredible sports history of Chicago?
It's so crazy. Yeah, we did. My dad actually was working with a guy and selling oil to this one guy's company who had a skybox ticket at the Bulls Stadium, and we were going every single game. And I remember seeing Michael Jordan. I remember the theme song, and I can't even do it, but the bull is floating. This little drone bull is floating out in space over the court. And I remember seeing Dennis Rodman and his funky hair. And mind you, I'm young. I'm little BB Ash. But there's 3 of us at the time. My youngest brother wasn't born yet. But Ty remembers, my older brother Ty remembers going to the games. He's a sports fanatic, that guy. He could tell you every stat, this and that. But I remember going to those games, mostly eating like the free food and the skybox tickets.
Right.
But as far as tickets go, we went every single game. So pretty cool to be able to say I saw all of those instrumental guys in basketball play.
So you went to the finals.
We went to everything. Dude, I couldn't even tell you how many games I went to. Like, we went every single game that they had in Chicago.
That's incredible. And then another thing that you got to go to, because now I'll transition it back to Utah, is you have those Olympics in Salt Lake. And there's a bunch of stuff in Park City. I think there's stuff in Deer Valley. Do you get to go to a shit ton of events?
Yeah. I mean, the reason why my parents moved us here in the Olympic year, they wanted us to experience what it was like in a ski town, immersed in it during this massive, massive Olympic event. My parents were both volunteers at like a couple different of the games. So they got us tickets to go to 8 different events. So I saw the bobsled, I saw the Nordic skiing, I saw everything. But, at the time, there was no slopestyle. I just knew I wanted to be a skier at that time. I didn't know what path I was going to take, even though I had that rollerblading background. And also I was a gymnast and a cheerleader as well. So I had like the flips and spins in my back pocket. I just didn't know that's exactly what I wanted to do yet.
And at that Olympics, snowboarders were the darlings of the games. Half pipe, I think we took 1, 2, and 3. It was like an American podium. Skiing was only race. And seeing it in person, do the dreams become, I want to be an Olympic racer? Or does it make you want to try snowboarding at all? Or is it just like you are still focused on being a skier?
Well, you know what? I should backtrack. Here's where it all switched. It was right when I turned 13. So right before we moved here in 2002. I remember there was a big, and like how big can the Grand Geneva 200-foot vertical NASCAR, racing be, right? Or NASCAR, not NASCAR, NASCAR. But, I was racing and I remember I lost one of the races back in Grand Geneva. And my brother was like, you suck at racing. You need to start doing free ride. And I cried that whole night and I learned 360s the next day. I did jump back and forth, though, from 13 until I was like 14-ish, from skiing to snowboarding. I wasn't sure at the time, I remember that now, what I wanted to do. But I knew at that point, before we moved from Chicago to Utah, that I didn't want to race anymore, but I wasn't sure which footing I wanted yet. So after seeing the Olympics, I remember watching snowboarding and I thought it was so cool, but I didn't feel 100% confident. I knew skiing ran in my blood, but I knew it wasn't racing. During the Olympics, I knew that's not what I wanted to do.
So, you have the skiing background, you've got the flips and the spins, you've got blading, which teaches you a lot as well. And then if you think about it, does all your blading turn into park skiing when you get to Utah? Is it pretty much like you and Kai Krepola running the skate park in Utah?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is crazy. Yeah, me and all my brothers. And there were so many guys that we met. And it's funny, some of my best friends still to this day, for over 23 years, are some of the kids that I first started rollerblading with. One of the names is Rocky Maloney. I don't know if you know Rocky.
Yeah, he's the photographer guy?
He is. So Rocky, his locker was above mine. So when we first moved here, I'm 13, don't know anybody, opened up my locker. Rocky's locker was below mine, and he became instantly my best friend. He wasn't a photographer at the time, but he was like, yeah, I ski. Yeah, I rollerblade, and started getting me in that crew of people. And so, yeah, we would go, same thing like in Chicago. We would go every single day after school to the skate park. We would go and shred the park. And then once skiing came, same thing. I'm the only girl shredding with all these dudes from Park City and my brothers. And, that's how I got good fast.
And was there ever any hate in Park City for inline skating? Because I know in Chicago it's totally accepted. But when you go to a ski town, do you feel that more in Utah?
Yeah. You know what? My he's a skateboarder. He was a pro snowboarder before. So he does the whole like sideways stance, right? The other day we went to a skate park. I'm like, damn, I should have brought my blades. He's still calling us fruit booter. It's the whole thing that like these skateboarders and, rollerbladers, whatever it is. And I never gave a shit. Like I was always the only girl anyway. So I got made fun of for a lot of shit as it was to be a girl, to do the guy things, to wear guy pants, just all the things. So I personally never cared because I did what I loved. And I knew that like I was going to go somewhere if I just kept my laser focus. But as far as like rollerbladers now, I haven't been to a skate park besides the other day when he went skateboarding in so long. But I'm watching Kaya, dude, and I'm ready to bring it back. I'm like ready for some rolling again because I just think it's so important. But a lot of the skiers nowadays, all these young kids, they're skateboarding. Like they don't put on any blades because I think it's quote unquote dumb. And it always has been looked at as like kind of wacky. And I don't get it because I think it transitions from rollerblading to skiing like that. There's no other way.
It's common sense. The stance that you're in, it's the tricks that you're doing. It's easily going to transfer from the pavement to the snow. And unfortunately, the skate park is the one area in the world where you can still make fun of somebody for what they like to do just because you feel like being mean and being a bully. We don't need to talk about that anymore, because when you get to Park City, you eventually go to the Winter Sports School, and that is a place where they breed athletes for the Olympics, for the X Games. For you, like when you moved to Park City, did you go straight to the winter school, or did you take a couple years of just being in like public school?
No, I went to public school for 10 months once we moved here. And then we found out what the winter school was. My parents enrolled me and my brothers in that. And then I just kind of went straight into it after, 10 months of being here. And public school was really, really hard for me. When I moved here, A, I didn't know anybody. B, I didn't know any girls. Like, I've got 3 brothers, so I can make guy friends easy. Girls is much, much harder. And it's much harder in a place that you think like, oh, there's mountains. There's going to be a lot more girls that like do the thing that I want to do and like make girlfriends. It was really fucking hard. And I remember like I don't want to use the word bullied. I feel like that gets thrown around a lot these days, but I definitely felt not bullied from the women, definitely from some of the guys that didn't do it, who, made comments at me and anyway, that didn't ski. But the girls, there were no girls that did it out here and did at least park. Like there were maybe like some girls that went skiing with their family, but it was really hard to make girlfriends. And the moment my parents enrolled me in the winter sports school, we had the biggest class that there was at the winter sports school. I had 22 kids in my graduating class. That was the biggest one in history at that time. And all the girls there were either racers or mogul skiers, but I made more of a solid friend group because I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if you're not in the same discipline as me, but at least we're kind of on the same focus of like, we like winter. But public school was hard. It was really hard to meet friends, and sat by myself. This is embarrassing. I sat by myself at lunch. Unfortunately, Rocky and a couple of other friends that I became guy friends with, we had different lunch periods. So like none of the girls sat with me. It was hard.
Oh, sad high school for Ashley. But you become a big name pretty quickly, I feel like, because in 2004, you do well in all the Utah-based big air events. But more importantly, you hook up with Off Trail Productions for First Light, and you had a standout part with that one. Did that kind of build like an underground cult following for you online around your name? Like you go to New Schoolers and people are all of a sudden talking about you?
Shit, I hope it's not a cult, but but yeah, I guess it's one of those things. Justin made the coolest First Light movie. I remember that. I remember filming a lot of parts of that with him and Eric Seo, the photographer, and all the local kids. And yeah, that definitely, I would say, started my career, because the big air event, actually the first one I ever did and won, there was another skier, and I'll throw this name out there, Craig Coker. If you remember, Craig helped me get my first sponsor. He was on Line at the time. And Line then, after my first big air at the Canyons, I did a 540, huge. He was like, we need you on the team. I got a call from Jason.
Yes.
Jason. Yep. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I haven't said these names in a long time. And he was like, we need you. Craig said, you're the one. So I got a sponsor almost immediately after my first ski competition at the Canyons. And then First Light came out around that same time. And yeah, some of the coolest street skiing I ever did. And at that time, I actually was only ever doing big air and street riding, because there really wasn't a lot of slope to be done. Like Park City had good jumps and rails, but there was no slope like major contest. It was all rail jams, big air. And so we did most of our skiing in the streets.
Yeah, and then I would say then in 2005, you end up heading to the Vermont Open and you win the big air and slopestyle there. And I was thinking that was a huge deal because I figured that was where you met Jason Leventhal and became part of the Line team. But that's not the case. That happened before that event. But this year was also the year I think you were in Sports Illustrated with Kai Peterson. How did that whole thing come together?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. God, I'd have to pull up these magazines because I don't even remember some of the stuff that you're even saying. Man, concussion brain, I guess. But I can't really remember the Sports Illustrated, but I remember that year I also got a FHM offer as well. And I never did it because I wanted to shred hard and be known for my shredding rather than like taking off my clothes type thing. But I remember the Sports Illustrated and I remember the Vermont Open. And in fact, if I'm not wrong, I think I won the Rail Jam that year too. I think it was Big Air and the Rail Jam at Vermont Open.
Nice. Yeah, you probably did, and I probably missed it in my research. The year 2006 is something that I couldn't find many things in the stats of you actually winning much stuff, but I believe this is the year that you get invited to Parkosaurus, and I would think the highlight of Parkosaurus is meeting Sarah Burke. Do you remember that vividly?
I could never forget that day. So unfortunately, we don't have Sarah here to talk to her about it. But from my perspective, I remember it so well, so clearly. I believe around that time I was getting my license. So I went with my dad. We drove there. And I remember, got invited to Parkosaurus. I was freaking out because I got to see all of these idols that I saw in maybe 1242, if that movie had been out by then on VHS. Yep. So I remember getting invited. I remember Oakley had like flowed me like these big puffy pants. I bought my own jacket. It was Oakley. I had to be like Tanner, big green A-frames. And I remember going there, didn't really know how to do anything other than slide a rail and do some 540s over big jumps. So I was like, I'm not in the right place here. And I remember being at the top of this rail that I was trying to do like a disaster on. And Sarah skied up to me. I was freaking out. And she goes, "Hey, I'm Sarah Burke. Nice to meet you." Put her hand out. And I went to put my hand out. And I'm about to say, "I'm Ashley." And she finishes my sentence. She goes, "Ashley Battersby, I know who you are." I don't I shit my pants, but I felt like I probably could have, or fallen over, or, you know what, I was losing it. And I told my dad that, and I'll never forget that, because I'm like, she knows who I am. Like, this is my idol. And anyway, she goes, "Nice to meet you. Can't wait to ski with you." And then she ended up like shredding in the pipe and killing it. But man, it's so vivid in my mind.
When you think of a person like that, who's a once in a lifetime talent and personality, and you get to meet her, and that's like mind blowing that she knows who you are. But over the years, was there an impact that she left on you? Like, how did she change you as a person?
Man, I don't know. That's a hard one to answer, because I mean, not just Sarah, but Christy. I mean, both of these women, growing up watching them and wanting to be just like them, it goes from idol, and you kind of look at this person as like not human, right? And then you meet them and you're like, wow, they're a real person. They know who I am. They're familiar. And then you start to ski with them, and then you become friends. And then it goes from like idol to like, like not even competitor. I feel like we skipped that part, but like you compete against each other, and then to friends. But Sarah never felt, and I'm not saying because I was better by any means, I'm saying it because of the person that she was. She never felt like a competition. She felt like home. And I bet if you ask any one of the girls that skied with her that knew her that well, it just felt like if you won or she won, she was just as happy. Or like, she was a friend. Like if you were upset, she was like the shoulder to cry on, even if she won and you didn't. It's really hard to describe Sarah and what she did for all of us as a human. There are really, truly no words. I'm not just saying that because she's no longer with us. It's really the person that she was. And she made you feel like you were not less than her, even though she could have.
It's time for my second sponsor break, and I'm going to start things off with Elan Skis. I started telling you about Elan building a cult following in the States about 3 years ago. And if you're like me and heading to the mountain on a weekly basis, I know you've been seeing more Elans by the day. Why? Because they'll make you a better skier. The product that Elan puts into the market is second to none. I mean, Elan's a company that also makes luxury yachts, so you know they're not going to cut corners on materials or production. They're built in Elan's proprietary factory, one of the most sustainable in the world, and the difference in quality is noticeable. Walk up to any ski wall and compare the craftsmanship of an Elan ski to the rest, and there's a difference that you will see and feel. But when you get them on the snow, that's where Elan really shines. From my ripstick models to my new favorite twin tip, the Playmaker, Elan keeps making better and more fun skis every year. If you want to have more fun on the mountain next year, head on over to elanskis.com and find the pair that's best for you. My next sponsor is Rollerblade, the brand that invented inline skates. Rollerblade has been keeping skiers in shape since 1980. If you've listened to this podcast and my interviews with US ski teamers, all of them use Rollerblade branded skates to get where they are today. It's the only all-season sport that mimics the motion of skiing and utilizes the same muscle groups. So really, it's a no-brainer that if you want to get better on your skis, in the park or at speed or anywhere really, inline skating is going to make you better. Remember, running wrecks your knees, and biking is proven not to get your legs in ski shape. If you want to start ski season like you left off last year, download yourself Rollerblade's award-winning Skate to Ski app, pick yourself up a pair of skates, and get to work. You can thank me in early December when you're surprised your ski legs are that strong. To find out more about all things rollerblade, head on over to rollerblade.com. My final sponsor is Best Day Brewing. And I'll tell you, I've been loving having Best Day as a sponsor, as it's really helped me change my ways. See, I'm a binge drinker. While I don't drink that often, when I do, I put a bunch back. And my issue is that, like with everything, I drink way too fast, and within a couple of hours, I need to go home because the alcohol has gotten the best of me. But not anymore. Now I'm managing my fun time by making sure that every other beer I drink a Best Day. And by doing that, I've been having my best days and nights ever. I can stay out longer, I'm coherent, happy, and I don't feel like crap in the morning. And they taste so good. I'll put a Best Day Hazy IPA up against any alcoholic IPA in a blind taste test, and you won't be able to tell which is which. On top of that, Best Days are only like 60 calories, which, like drinking less alcohol, is something that I think about these days. While I'm not asking you to quit drinking by any means, please support me and your health by heading over to bestdaybrewing.com and order a six-pack or two. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. I met you in 2007 at the Queen's Cup in Park City. You won that event, but really the takeaway I have from that event was there were so many badass women in one place, and the energy and the vibe was like something I had never been around before. And then it made me think about the experience in Park City, because you said early on, like, you didn't have a big crew of women, but it seemed like by 2007, was there a solid crew of women that you could go shred with every day where you didn't have to be like the token female and a bunch of guys? It was like you and your girl crew?
No.
Okay.
And I say that pretty confidently because there were some girls in high school that I went skiing with on the weekend, but no girls at that level. Like, yes, there was Greta. I don't know if she was living here at the time or what. And there was Taylor Brooke. She is huge in the scene now. And there were all these younger girls, but I wouldn't say there was like a solid crew of girls that I went with every single day. Of course, Anna Damasi, Ripper, another friend, Becca Babbitt, Ripper, but I wouldn't say we skied together every single day. What I remember, and maybe again, I'm remembering it wrong, but I remember skiing with my brothers and the guys, just us, every single day. Stephen Thomas at the time when I was younger, one of my first boyfriends. And then I remember seeing Jossi Wells come in. Actually, this is crazy. I remember when, still the only girl, pretty much Park City every day, right? Because this was my thing. I remember seeing Jossi. He had a massive blonde ponytail. And I saw this, who I thought was a girl, did a disaster 450 onto this flat down. And I had been trying to learn that all day, for weeks, for months. And this kid just goes and does it. And I was like, who the hell is that chick? And I remember meeting Jossi, and I like felt a little relief after like I found out it was a guy, not a girl. But, I would say like there wasn't a massive crew of girls. It was kind of on and off as far as like girls living in Utah still at the time. There were some young girls, but like I wouldn't say the girls that I wanted to ski with people that were better than me, and all the people that were better than me were my brothers and the guys, just because there wasn't a massive amount of girls or women doing it at that time and doing it every day.
Okay. Well, the rest of 2007 includes you getting second at the European Open and you winning WSI in Whistler. And that is the biggest party in skiing. But I don't know if you were a big partier. Actually, I looked at you as like the biggest straight edge skier back then. There was no weed, there was no drinking. You were just focused. Was there ever peer pressure for you to join in on the party? Because I think your brothers and like all their friends, they partied as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was always like, you can call it peer pressure, but I've never felt it. I never was like, oh, I should do it. I had my mind so laser focused on skiing that even as I started to like ski with all these other girls from all over the world who became my best friends, we would meet up, they would be drinking, and I just kind of followed them around. And we all just like hung out, but I was always the designated driver, not necessarily in Europe, but in Utah I was. And then when I went overseas and skied somewhere else, all my friends would party and I would just get lemon or a lemonade or lemon and some sort of, carbonated drink. So it looked like I was doing something, but I didn't drink until I was 24, I believe. So yeah, I never was tempted to party, though my brothers and everybody else around me did. I just liked my sleep. I wanted to stay focused on skiing. And my thought at the time was, because yes, I was like very religious. I wanted to be like the goody two shoes out of all my brothers. I wanted to do the right thing. But also like, it wasn't just religion. Like I took that opportunity of like my parents sacrificed a lot. Like my dad, left his business. My mom left all of her family and friends back in Chicago and Michigan, moved us out to Park City. And the moment I turned pro, or at least started getting paid and getting free stuff and getting my travels paid for, I was not going to fuck that up by going to Europe and like dancing on the table and like falling off, breaking my ankle, which did happen to one of my girlfriends. And she missed that European Open, like I wasn't going to mess that up because they sacrificed a lot. And I worked my ass off to get there. Like I may have been a good skier at the time and, slope skier, but like I wasn't naturally talented. I had to work to get to where I was.
Well, it sounds like a lot of what you did was you manifested things and visualized things, and you did that from a young age. Your brother was telling me about that. And was that kind of part of tuning all like the peer pressure and everything else out and being focused? Was like you were going to manifest your destiny to become a pro skier and nothing was going to stop that?
I think so. I think he's right on. I remember in first grade, I was drawing pictures when they first asked you, like kindergarten, first grade, what do you want to be when you grow up? And mine was always like a stick figure with skis on the bottom doing like a big spread eagle. I remember this like vividly every time I was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was always a skier, always a skier. And I guess you could say I was a yogi from an early age without knowing it, because I kept my mind focused and lasered and like blocked out everything else that didn't serve the path of wanting to be a skier. And I didn't know what that looked like when I was that young. But as I started to get older, I wasn't going to let anything mess it up.
All right. And then in 2008 is when the whole ski world knows your name because you win the US Open. Can you describe the madness of that event and how I think it would change everything in your world ski-wise?
Oh my gosh. I remember at that time I had a pro model ski, I think with the line, had my face on it with the Metra or the L train, bunch of flowers. I wanted them to call it the A-bomb, but they said that's too aggressive. So they called it a pearl or something. I don't know. Anyway, I remember riding on my own ski at the US Open, and I remember it being so bad. Like the weather was crap. It was blowing super hard snow. I remember some of the girls wanted to even cut the event because some of them couldn't make it over the jump. And I'm like, I don't care if I straight air this thing. Like, I'm here, I'm doing this. And I remember, when I found out that I won and they gave me this big, I have it hanging in my office next to my Christmas tree, this big belt. It looks like a UFC belt, and it's got the U on it. I remember they handed it to me. They said my name, and I can't even tell you the feeling of that. And I was up there, I remember, with Kim Lamar, and I'm forgetting the other name of the other girl, but I just remember that was like a major turning point for me, knowing I can be on top. And, right now I'm the best. Right now I'm the best. And I remember feeling that way and not holding it. Like, obviously you got to be humble and have some humility as an athlete, but like, I remember at that point, I never knew I would make it to the top, and that felt like the top.
Another thing that separated you from the rest of the competition, especially the women, was your style. I mean, you were wearing baggy style clothing like way before the 4x9 guys, I think. Visor beanies as well. Can you describe your physical stature and then the size of the clothing that you were wearing back then?
Yeah. So I was riding for Helly Hansen at the time. I remember that coral outfit. I wore a coral puffy and coral pants, kind of like a pinkish orange. And I remember that was kind of a major thing for Helly Hansen. They wanted me to wear women's medium and like pink, and, coral was as close as I got to pink at the time. But because of three brothers, I wanted to wear the men's XL stuff. So Helly Hansen had to make women's stuff bigger at the time when I was riding for them because I wouldn't ride the female small or medium. And my stature, as far as that goes, it hasn't really changed much since I started skiing, but 5'1", 5'2" in that range, about 115 to 20 pounds, like pretty tiny person in a men's XL. And Helly Hansen wanted me to wear the women's stuff. So they would actually made men's gear and then put like just a different color pattern for me. So it looked more women. But it's funny, I still have a full closet full of men's XL shit. And I'm always telling my brothers, like, hey, I'm got to sell this or get rid of it. Do you want it? Because all my brothers are bigger than me. So it still fits them. But I have toned it down a little bit.
So when you're dressed like that, is it like every time you get to the lift line, someone's confusing you as a boy?
Oh, yeah. I remember I had a Battersby jersey. First sponsor was Obermeyer. They made me a big men's XL Battersby jersey. And I remember some guy comes up to me and he goes, yo, what up, Ty? I didn't think you got here this early, like to ski. And I turned around and I took off my goggles. I'm like, it's Ash, dude. Like, so always getting mistaken for a guy. Now the girls have the little hair strings in front. And I guess you can maybe kind of tell, but yeah, at the time, and I didn't care. I wanted to kind of go incognito. I wanted to be one of the best skiers out there and also be mistaken for a guy because, you know, I wanted to be that good. I wanted to be like just as good as the guys I was riding with.
And then when you think about it, you were on this heli team that was like stacked. I mean, they had every important athlete, it seemed like, at the time. And then all of a sudden the heli team had nobody because they cut their whole team. Were you a part of that program that this like the number one clothing brand in skiing, it seemed like, for a little while, and then it just disappeared?
Yeah, I remember it was DPK and I can't remember a couple other slope guys, but they cut all of us. They had us, they were paying us well, they were taking us all over. I actually went to Norway and my first overseas trip for the first time ever with heli. And then they cut us completely. It wasn't because I wouldn't wear the women's clothes. It's just because they cut all their park riders. And that's all the information they gave us. And that was shitty because, you know, a pay cut. But also, I actually started my own clothing line that year.
Well, I think I remember that you were rocking David Lesch's First Drop brand for a little bit. And I remember seeing stickers on your helmet with First Drop. But then you eventually go to start A-Bomb Apparel. And what was the inspiration to do your own thing? You just didn't want to rep anybody else and you wanted to wear shit that you wanted to wear?
So you know what? David's First Drop actually came after the timeline was Helly Hansen dropped. Then I started A-Bomb because I believe around that time I must have blown my first ACL. I don't even know what the years are because there were so many of them. But my parents were like, go back to school. I'm like, I don't want to go back to school. I'm going to just like ski. And they're like, well, you can't because you're injured. So I started sewing my own shit. And then David's came after that. But I started sewing my own clothing line because Helly Hansen wasn't paying anymore. There was no other companies except the companies that wanted me to ride their shit for free. And I'm like, nah. At that point, I'd already been making money and I was already like established enough where I'm like, I'm not riding your shit for free. Like I'm in movies, I'm in films, like I'm in contests. Like if you want, you know, you got to pay me if you want me to wear your stuff. And they weren't going to pay the ones that reached out. So I started making A-Bomb apparel and I sewed all my own. Not just workout wear and active wear, but I started sewing my own hoodies and then it turned into jackets. And it was funny because a lot of people on the hill at Park City were like, dude, that tall tee or that tall hoodie is so sick. Where'd you get it? I'm like, dude, I made it. So I started branding in the ski world for a little bit. My brothers called me A-Bomb. And the main reason was because all my shit would explode every time I'd try a new trick, you know, yard sales everywhere. And then as I started getting better, I would hope that name transition to like she's an A-Bomb, she's like killing it, going high, exploding in the sky, doing all cool tricks, who knows. But that's why I called it A-Bomb apparel. And then I started writing for David after that because worked out a deal there.
Well, it sounds like you invented the hoodie dress with A-Bomb, but then you went to David. And then, you know, in thinking of your best year of being a pro skier, who was paying you and how much was the most you made in one ski year?
Oh man, so line was incredible because I got a pro model. Then I turned to Vocal, and then Vocal was probably my best paying sponsor ever. I was doing skis, bindings. They had DeBello boots. I think they had a thing with them. Anyway, and then Vocal had never given anybody a pro model until I got on the team, which was pretty rad.
Whoa.
Yeah, so I got my first pro model through Vocal, which was, and they had never done it for any other athlete. So it was pretty cool to be the first one. And then after that, after Vocal ran out, I went to Fisher, skis, boots, bindings, all the things. And I wouldn't say one was better than the other as far as like team managers. I got so lucky. I got the best team managers. But as far as payment, I probably made the most on Fisher as far as ski companies go. And man, I can't even tell you, it must have been like 45,000 per ski season. But again, you're riding head to toe basically. But I remember cutting it probably by 10 grand because I wanted to make sure that brothers, all three brothers and both parents got skis, boots, bindings for free and didn't have to worry about it, and as many as they wanted per year. So I actually cut my financial contract lower so I could make sure that my whole family was taken care of with gear. So, I mean, I still hold that against my brothers. I'm like, you got to help me fix my door or my toilet because I didn't have you go without skis. But, I had Rockstar, I had Belay. I can't even tell you, I can't remember the numbers on everything. I remember it paid my bills and I had the best team managers and the best team trips because of those sponsors. I was pretty lucky with all the people that I got to ride for.
And you were pretty lucky in the time that you came up because like you saw the creation of the AFP and there was so much excitement around things. Like when did you find out that slopestyle was going to be in the Olympics and what was your reaction?
I remember working out at the US ski team building before they had a slopestyle. It was me and Jen Hudak before they had a slopestyle team or half pipe team at all. And I believe I found out it could have been in 2009 or 10, somewhere around there when they realized they were going to do slopestyle in the Olympics. But we were starting to train with some of the best nutritionists, sports psychs, sports strength trainers, all the things. Jen and I got confirmation that we could work out with the mogul and the racing team and work with a strength coach way before they knew that they were going to even have a slope team for 2014. So we got into the US ski team building, the Center of Excellence, pretty early. And I mean, when I found out, I was like, this is my dream. So you asked, like, did you know if you wanted to be like, X Games or slopestyle or racer, like when I knew that Olympics was even an option, once everybody else knew, I was on board. I was like, that's the end goal. That's the end dream, was the Olympics for me.
And before you could even get into the Olympics, there's a whole bunch of things that happen. You win the first Dew Tour slopestyle. You get a bronze at the European X Games, and you get fourth at the X Games in Aspen. So you're right there with all the competition. And then at the Olympic qualifiers, the first Olympic qualifiers, you end up blowing your knee. The good news is you have time on your side to get yourself back on snow, and you're back at Aspen for X Games the next year, and you get another fourth place. And speaking to X Games, I think you got like 4 fourth places and 1 fifth place. Does that ever get to be totally frustrating and into your head? Like, because fourth place is like the worst place you can get.
1,000%. Yeah, fourth place is rough because you're right on that bubble, right? Like if you made third, and just a little side story about third and fourth and all that. I remember at the European Open, it wasn't the year I won, I don't believe. Maybe it could have been. Again, timeline meshes, but I remember my girlfriend, Kim Lamar, she got hurt at the Euro Open. And so she broke her arm. She had to go home. I was on the wait list. So like I was like right outside the bubble for European X Games. And I ended up taking Kim's spot. So Kim had to go home from Switzerland, fly home, and all of us other girls went to France. I was going to France whether I was in the X Games or not, because I was like on the bubble. If somebody got hurt, I was still able to train the course. She got hurt, so I'm in. And that was the year that I got third. I remember being up in the night before the contest, obviously had my pasta before. I was in the room with Kaya and Jamie Anderson. And Jamie was the first one who really got me into yoga, actually. And Jamie, Kaya, and I are all sitting in a circle oming with each other. It was the first time I ever omed. I thought it was weird. I was like, Jamie's a little like funny. And she like, she's into this woo-woo stuff. But Jamie was the one who got me super into like yoga and meditation. And it was the night before and we were going over our runs and I was in a good place that night. I remember placing third the next day. I called my parents and I was screaming, I won. Like I got first. I won the X Games. And my mom was like, you won? And then Kaya's in the room. Kaya friggin' won. Kaya carried me. And Kaya's like, no, you didn't. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. No, I didn't win. I'm like, I got third, but it feels like I won. Like, it was best feeling in the world to finally get on the podium, whether it was, Snowmass X Games or Euro X Games. I got an X Games medal, and I was so, so happy that just like, third place, it didn't matter to me what place. I was on podium. I won. I won in my heart, right? Even though it was third. So that was really, really a cool experience. Talking about the fourth and fifths, that's a hard thing. And I wouldn't say a hard thing to talk about now, but at the time it was just like, damn, like I'm right there. I'm right there. Like, how am I not getting 1, 2, or 3? And my tricks are comparable to all these other girls. Like, I'm right up there. What am I doing wrong? So it was hard because our sport's not based on time. It's based on style and tricks. And I'm like, I know I've got style. What am I doing wrong? And so I start to go over it. Okay, I missed the grab on that. Okay. So yeah, fuck yeah, it's frustrating to like get right outside the bubble. But also like I cherish those first places, those third places, and also the bubble. I cherish that because it made me work harder. And it doesn't mean just because you work harder, you're gonna be on top. It just, as a person, made me get up and do the workout at 5 a.m. And then it made me get up and do the warm up, and it made me get up and do these things, which now has like a structure for my current life, So like, I can't say like, yeah, it's shitty. Yeah, of course it's shitty, but like it's structured the person. It's really molded who I am. And I may not have ever gotten first. And that was the goal, to get X Games gold and even make it to the Olympics. But like, it wasn't in the cards. Blowing my knee at the Dew Tour right before the Olympic qualifier, you know what I mean? Like, that was fucking hard and hard on the heart. And like, to be honest, if we talk about it all day, like I could probably get to tears with it, because it's still hard for me to think about like, man, that was the end goal. But like I talk it through and I'm like, but it wasn't in the beginning. It wasn't the end goal in the beginning. The end goal was to be a skier. And what did I do? I got to be a skier. I got to live my dream. The X Games, sure, first place would have been awesome. And same with going to the Olympics. But like, I couldn't have done anything more. I did everything I could. And when I look back at it, kind of like you were saying, like, well, you didn't drink and you didn't party. Yeah, some of the people that maybe did those things also got first place. But like, for me, it was, maybe I wouldn't have gone this far if I did those things. Like, you can't say what if, right? Like I did everything I could to make it to the place that I did.
Injuries are unfair, unfortunately, but life is not fair. And you can look at the highlight of your career, at least when I'm looking at your career. There was a time in skiing before the double era where the Switch 10 was the holy grail of big air tricks. And in 2011, like, you're the first one to land that in competition. Do you look at that as the highlight of that year at least, or maybe even your career, landing that trick?
Yeah, the Switch 10 took me a whole year to land. I remember at 9 Queens, I tried it, kept eating it, tried it a whole nother time 1 year later, and I landed it at 9 Queens again 1 year later. And it just like, it shows the progression. Like, you keep working at something, it's gonna happen. Like, you're gonna make it, and you're gonna make it strong and look good. And like, yeah, I would say the Switch 10 was like the biggest thing of my career. That's probably as far as I could say, because I didn't make it to the Olympics. But as far as like a trick goes, that's the biggest trick I've ever done. And I can claim it and I can say that I did it and I worked hard for it. And it's pretty cool watching that video back. I have it on almost all my Instagrams right now, because I was the last one to drop, and it was the last run of the day. And in ski world, we don't say last run, but I remember being so focused and landing that. Yeah, I just dropped, like, just cried. I was so happy. There's so many moments like that in my career, though, that I could say, like, it wasn't just the Switch 10. I even have a moment of that when Kaya won the first X Games. There's actually a Google pic. You can search our names, and I'm running up to her, giving a big hug, and her arms are up. And you see the back of me and the front of her. There are so many moments in my career that aren't just mine. Like, I feel like I share them with the sisters that I've made in skiing. And if you were to ask me now, like, what the biggest thing is that I remember, and it wouldn't be the Switch 10, it wouldn't be like the Dew Tour win, it wouldn't be those things, even X Games, it would be like the sisterhood that I had with all of these women that I continue to have like best friendships, though we're across seas, across the world from each other. I wouldn't have changed any of it for those memories with the girls.
And then if you look at the whole Olympic trajectory, you are on the U.S. free ski team. You are on pace to go to the Olympics. And then you have another knee injury. I mean, there was two, I think, that happened within 2 years. And injuries took away the Olympic dream, but you did have an amazing ski career. But when you think about it, that's kind of when you call it, like 2014, 2015, I think you realize you're not going to come back to a competitive ski career like you've experienced before. And when you decide to pull the plug on a professional ski career, do you call your sponsors and let them know it's over? Do you just let contracts play out? How does that whole thing work out?
You know, I try to let them play out because I wasn't ready in my heart to like let it go. My dad always said, if it's not fun, don't do it, right? If it becomes work, stop doing it. It never felt like work, really. And with the ski team being involved at the time with the Olympics, I had my insurance paid for. And I was like, I cannot retire until all of my shit is intact.
Yeah.
All of my joints, all of the things. So I had 2 torn UCL ligaments in my thumbs, one in my left, one in my right. I had the knee surgery I had to get, and then I had a deviated septum. And I swear, my husband now, but at the time he was my boyfriend, he was like, you're just addicted to surgery. He's like, you got to stop with this. I'm like, no, I am trying to get these surgeries for free so I don't have to pay for these things. And I went in at that time when I decided to call it, as far as calling sponsors, I let my contracts played out and they were cool with it. Like, you know, I started getting into yoga and fitness, and I kind of started still representing them. And they paid me through, you know, like I had been with all of them for a long time. As far as the ski team goes, I had to have a chat with Skogan Spraying at the time. And he was like, what are we doing? And I'm like, yeah, I'm done. But, you know, so you do have to let them know. But, you know, sometimes you're just another number to some people. But to them, I had been with them for a long time. They let me play it out. I ordered gear even from Fisher. By the time my contract was up, they hooked me up with classic skate skis and Nordic skis. They hooked me up with a whole touring setup, gave me all the things I wanted before I ended. And I thought that was pretty cool because, you know, I was a pioneer of the sport. So they let me do that whole thing. But yeah, I had to make sure I got my surgeries paid for before, you know, I finally quit everything. Because, I mean, if anything, those are expensive.
Yeah. That's really smart of you. And like you said, you were a pioneer of the sport and you had an amazing career. And throughout the whole time, you were able to get your degree from the University of Utah. You were able to focus on building your fitness and yoga business. And that's what you're up to these days. And this all takes us to something that I call inappropriate questions. This is the part of the podcast where I get someone that you know to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. I was able to get your older brother, a badass skier in his own right, Ty Battersby, to ask the inappropriate questions. And are you ready for question number 1 from Big Bro?
I guess.
All right, here we go.
Ashley, tell me about the time that you got food poisoning and sent me to rescue you at 2 a.m.
All right, so do you remember the time where you got food poisoning? And I put that in air quotes.
Yeah. Am I allowed to say it all on the podcast?
I think you've dropped like 12 F-bombs. You can say whatever you want.
All right, cool. All right. So I had just gotten home from Europe. I had been gone for a month doing all the things, came home. I'm living with 4 other guys in this college disgusting house, whatever, guy college house. Roll up at 11 o'clock at night. None of my brothers are there. I live with one of my younger brothers, not my older one. Roll up, nobody's home. And I open up the fridge and there's all these cookies. They have like the funfetti sprinkles on top of them. And at the time, you know, college rules, you write your name on every little thing so nobody eats your shit.
Yep.
So I didn't have any food, been gone, opened up the fridge, found all these funfetti cookies. I'm like, okay, my roommate's not going to know. I'm going to just take one and then I'm going to bed. Take a cookie, go to my room, getting all my stuff settled. Like, I'm tired, I'm jet lagged. Take a bite of half of the cookie. And I just like continue to do my like nighttime stuff. Started feeling super weird. Had never felt this feeling before. All of a sudden, I start to like try to dial my brother's number and my finger feels and looks like it's going through my phone. I'm like, why isn't my finger working? Why isn't my phone working? And things start to slow down and come into super clear focus. And then I go to the bathroom, I take the cookie, I flush it down the toilet because I started freaking out thinking there's something in that cookie. walked down the stairs. And by walked, I mean like hold on to all the walls, like I'm going to fall over. Walk downstairs because I start to hear music. I see my roommate's light on. My brother's, one of his best friends is down there jamming out. He's a DJ, does all the drugs in the book. I banged down his door, opened it. I'm like, dude, what was in those cookies? And he goes, oh no, you ate a cookie? Like, oh no? And I'm freaking out because I just got signed to the US ski team, first ski team. I sit down on his bed, start crying. I'm like, they're not going to let me go to the Olympics. I'm never going to be in Olympics. I start out and I ask him, I was like, will you just rub my back? Like his hand was going through my back. I was looking at his mouth. His mouth wasn't matching up with movements. His mouth was moving at a different pace of his voice. And he was like, you're going to be okay. Don't worry about it, while his mouth isn't matching. I don't know what was in those cookies. I never asked him after that. He called my brother. I got on the phone. I started screaming, please come and rescue me. Please come and rescue me. And my brother at the time, I don't know if he had been drinking. I don't know what the deal was. He's like, I can't drive. By the time he got a ride down from Park City to Salt Lake, I'm on the floor laughing hysterically. I don't know how much time has gone by, but my brother finally made it to rescue me. I threw up and I fell asleep.
All right, that is perfect. Let's go into question number 2.
What is the craziest activity you've ever done while participating in a 4th of July parade?
Selling kittens out of a little stroller baskets and also giving them away for free. I did it almost every year. I made the Chicago paper. It was rad. I had a bunch of kittens. Our main cat, Fluffy, had a bunch of cats every single year around the same time. And I would push a stroller through the parade and either give away free kittens or, sell them after.
That's an odd one. I just don't think, you never really see little kids pushing around a stroller giving away free animals, but I guess it was a different time back then, and it was Chicago.
It's true.
All right, your final inappropriate question.
Ashley, we all know you're the most straight edge skier, especially during your prime. You'd never drink alcohol, never did anything. Tell us about the night that our family met Joe on Christmas Eve for the first time ever.
Oh my God. All right. So my husband now, but boyfriend at the time, 12 years ago, first Christmas, had only known my family for about 2 weeks. My brother, as you could probably tell, maybe talking to him or get the vibe, I don't know. One girl out of all 3 boys, very protective brothers, which is great. My boyfriend, Joe, was driving a big white van, no windows, no seats in the back, nothing,
Like a child molester type of van?
Exactly.
Okay.
It was his grandpa's catering van. So anyway, I didn't drink until I met Joe, and it's not he's a bad influence or he's an alcoholic. I just never drink. And then at the time I met him, I started kind of dabbling into some alcohol. So day about 10 that Joe had ever met my family, came to Christmas dinner. I had one too many, probably like 7 glasses of wine, didn't even know what it would do. And mind you, at the time, I probably have only ever had a couple glasses in my system in my life at that time.
You're like 115 pounds.
Yeah, so tiny. Yeah, so much alcohol. By the time Joe showed up for Christmas dinner, I was drunk as a skunk. I could not make it to midnight mass. My mom was really bummed because I was so drunk. I was throwing up. I was super sloppy and started pulling off all my clothes. My brothers put robes over me and towels. All I remember was it was pretty chaos because I was screaming that I needed a pillow on the toilet because I was so sick. And Joe sat there, pulled my hair back, and my brothers were really upset because my mom made them go to midnight mass and I couldn't make it. And I'm sitting there crying, God hates me. God's going to hate me. And I was like, Mom, are you mad at me? And again, I'm not religious anymore. At the time, I really was. I had a skewed vision on some life things. Long story short, never made it to midnight mass. When I got home, my brothers were just taking screenshots and pictures of Joe's white van and his license plate, thinking that he was going to kidnap me and they'd never see me again. My brother was pissed that he had to go to midnight mass because he's like, we don't even know this guy. We don't know what he's going to do with her and that van. She's not in her mind. Anyway, all is well. He's my husband now, so we're good.
Awesome. So that was Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And your story is an interesting one. It had such a quick ascent to the top of the sport, and your style, which really is what defined your skiing. I mean, yeah, there was a Switch 10 and everything, but if you think back to your skiing and everybody thinks back to it, it was early on that gorilla style that Tanner had. Well, you had that too, and it oozed in all of your skiing, so it was that style that really sets you apart from the rest of the pack. But injuries can take down the best, and that's kind of what happened to you. Major injuries at the most inopportune times cost you the Olympics and I'm sure a lot of other hardware, and while it's a bummer, at the end of the day, you manifested your dreams, and not too many people can say that they did what you did, that you wanted to become a pro skier from a young age and you made it happen. It's a cool story. I thank you for telling it, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate you and everything that you've done for our sport.
So that was time with Ashley Battersby, and she really has an incredible attitude for how her career went. It's refreshing to hear how she made her dreams come true. And with the Olympics and the X Games, success at those would have been an added bonus. But Ashley achieved what she set out to do, and it was sure fun to watch. That's the podcast. At this point, it's time for the review of the week, and it comes from AMN414. It's a 5-star review, and it's titled Always Interesting NO ... I've been listening to this podcast for several years now. I love how Mike steers each interview, allowing for the listener to really learn about each highlight of each guest's life/career. Even guests I don't have interest in are worth listening to because Mike always seems to cleverly pull out the good stuff. That makes for a great podcast. There's something about his cadence in his interview that always grabs me. Nice work. Well, thank you, AMN, for that review. I really appreciate the fact that you recognize that I'm able to pull out little nuggets from each person that I interview. My goal whenever I interview somebody is to make each story different, but to highlight those little nuggets, to make these things interesting for me and for you. And I appreciate you reviewing. I appreciate those 5 stars, and you can email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com, and I will send you something awesome. If anybody else wants to win anything, it's super easy to do. All you need to do is listen to this free podcast, which I ask nothing from you for. And once you're done listening to it, if you like it, then you go to iTunes or wherever you listen to it and you review me. It is super appreciated. And if I read your review on the air, you win. It's simple. Also, that email address that I provided earlier, mike@thepowellmovement.com, well, you can send me an email there too to suggest any guests or express any questions or concerns that you may have for me. Finally, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for supporting my amazing sponsors. I only work with the best, and they are Stanley, Outdoor Research, Elan Skis, Best Day Brewing, Rollerblade, and Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Have a great week, everyone.